I'm Jeff Cornwall, and this is the Entrepreneurial Mind. Today our guest is Wesley Belden. We'll be back to talk with him about his business, Waffle, in a moment.
Healthcare reform has generated over 15,000 pages of regulations filled with increased complexity, compliance, and cost for your business. You could spend the time and money to figure it out, or you can trust Insperity to handle it for you with one stroke of the pen. We are ready for healthcare reform. Are you?
Talkopolis, the social media TV network for your city.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here today.
Yeah. So, Wesley, tell us a little bit about Waffle, and I have a certain sense of what you guys do. You enable companies to figure out social media and that kind of advertising. But tell us a little bit about the history and how it came to be and where you've gotten to this point.
So kind of what the problem we're trying to solve is, brands have their social media and all these different platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and they have this really great content, but it's living out there on the web on somebody else's platform, on Facebook's platform, on Twitter's platform. So what we're doing is we're allowing brands to really curate that content surrounding their brand, take ownership of that, and then broadcast it through their website. So they're using their customer testimonials, their customer social sentiments to tell their story on their website.
Interesting. So, so you're turning their website into social media, basically?
Sort of. It's kind of a decision that they have to make as a brand as to exactly what portion of the conversation they want that social media to take place in. Like when you go to an Amazon review, you find a product on Amazon, you read the specs surrounding it, and then ultimately you wind up looking at reviews and make a decision based on that. Each one of those sources of information is essential, but in and of itself is not enough to make the complete decision. So what we're doing is allowing brands to basically take that social media, add it to that conversation that occurs on their site in a reasonable fashion or hierarchy. So you can kind of run through and get the call to action on the page. Past that, then you would consume the social media content. And the idea is just to keep me engaged with your brand, learn more about your brand, and understand to humanize your brand.
So you actually bring Facebook and all of that to their website.
Exactly. So all the functions.
So how does that look? What is it? How does that work for them?
Again, that's up to the brand exactly how they want that to look. But basically, we produce a code, and you copy and paste that code into your website where you want this feed to show up. It's very stylized. We try to keep it very visual and also very minimal, so it doesn't detract away from the call to action. But when your customer is ready to consume that content, it's right there, and it's easy for them to interact with in a familiar fashion. And all the functionality that you would have if they were to go away to your Facebook page or your Twitter page, they have that same functionality to interact with that content, but they do it on your website.
So, so in terms of a typical client, how would you sit down and strategize with them and get them to understand what you do? Because this is kind of a different approach than they've been hearing from a lot of other sources. It's been push your content out, and you're saying pull it in. Mm-hmm. And then my next question as a potential client is, well, how do I get them to my site then? What are you going to do to help drive that?
See, social media is really great at bringing people to your site, but if somebody comes to your site from another channel or somebody refers them to your site, you don't want them to leave that site to consume that social media content.
So you're helping with the stickiness of their site.
Exactly.
Okay.
And kind of where they put it or how you want to strategize is what you're really trying to accomplish on your website. If you're a product that's being sold, a consumer product that's being sold on the website, there's a call to action on your site. There's actually a transactional place on your website. You really want to keep people there as long as possible to put that item in that cart, to have sentiment surrounding that item that's in their cart, and then eventually transact and purchase that item in the cart. So it is making the site much more sticky. It's giving you more content to consume, and not only is it more content to consume, it's carefully curated content. So you've said this post really gets across what it is that we're trying to sell. It gets across what we're trying to say about our product, but we're not saying it, our customers are saying it.
And so you help them bring that in, you help them identify that, or do they do that? How closely do you work with them in developing this content?
Basically, we have identified, our premier customer is a sort of customer that has a robust social media platform, or social media presence.
Okay.
So they're going to have their own social media manager, their social media marketing group. And so essentially we provide the tools to them. So they would go into the Waffle dashboard, which is where they control the social media that pulls into their site, identify the posts that are most enriching and select them, and then curate that content to then push to the website.
So you're not as much an advertising agency as you are a tool for an agency to use.
Precisely.
So do you have to sell to agencies? Is that your primary target market?
Right now we're in beta, so we're selling to a few people that we know that manage social media content for other brands, and then we're also selling to people that I know personally that have their own companies. But the idea is in the long-term adoption is to actually start working with social media management, marketing firms, as well as web development firms, and then getting on board with a lot of kind of different services like Drupal and Volusion and whatnot.
So how is it as a startup company? How do you keep up with such a dynamic industry? I mean, it's hard enough as a startup to get traction and kind of figure out what you're doing, but you're not dealing with a static target. You're dealing with clearly a moving target that moves pretty rapidly and sometimes pretty randomly. How do you envision that you're going to be able to stay relevant and help your clients keep up with that change? Well,
you always try to think about what product people are going to want in 6 months, to a year, because that's when inevitably what you're building today is going to actually come to fruition. You always hope it's going to be sooner, but usually hang-ups happen. So you try and envision what the space is going to look like in that future, and then kind of you find out what makes you novel. And as customer or competitors come on the space, you find out what makes you novel, and you really focus on that. And then always adapting and tacking and kind of changing for that moving target, because it is always going to be a moving target. But right now, that minimum viable product is very very defined and very focused on producing that, and then getting the lessons from that. And then eventually you're going to have to change where you're going and in what service.
Talk about some of those lessons, because to me that's some of the most exciting thing about when you first launch into the market is you start to get those aha moments when the customers tell you what they really want. What have you learned so far?
Kind of initially what we were really going after was kind of producing this robust social media, content-driven, service for our customers. So it would be like a social page, but on your web page. So I would go there and maybe be your header and your hours of operation, and then just this infinitely scrolling social media amalgamation. But what we learned from our first customers is that that's not really what they're going for. They really want to have kind of this call to action on their page, and this is the most important thing. We've been talking with a lot of the guys at Nissan, and on their website they have this button that says build your Nissan. And that's their call to action. That's where they really want you to click and interact with. So when you go to Nissan's webpage, that's the first screen you see, and that's that big red button, and they want you to click that. If you don't click that initially and you scroll down, we've identified that's where Waffle would best fit there, because now you've gone past that call to action. Your next move is to probably leave the page. But if you can scroll down and then you see this great social content, hopefully that keeps you stuck on the page
and gets you back up to that button.
Exactly. And then in addition to that, they want to convert those visits into likes on Facebook and follows on Twitter. So being able to see your content on your page makes me much more likely to like you from their page without actually leaving.
Fascinating startup story. Let's get you back sometime to hear how things are progressing.
I'd love to.
Thanks, Wesley.
Bandwidth for today's show is brought to you by SoftLayer.com. We love SoftLayer here at Talkopolis. They are the greatest hosting company ever. They make everything easy. Check out their website at SoftLayer.com. Thanks again for sponsoring the show.